All right, we are ready for a movement shooter.
The shooter genre has been around for quite some time now, and these games have their own subgenres from arcade shooters to tactical shooters to
Yep.
arena shooters to
Yep.
battle royales. However,
Yep.
there's an even deeper subgenre to help categorize these shooters, and it's
Sub?
defined by how its movement works. Most games
Ooh.
primarily focus on keeping the movement simple. You can go left, right,
Mm-hmm.
forwards, and backwards, and occasionally up and down. Games like
Ooh.
CSGO and Rainbow Six Siege have very limited movement, with the latter not even letting you jump, while other games like Call of Duty and Halo definitely want you to move a bit more.
So I had no idea that Halo actually had movement tech. I thought the only things that you had to worry about in Halo were hitting the crouch button after you jump to pick your legs up so you could, make your little jump arc a little bit higher so you can get over ledges. Because I think, can't you mantle in Halo now? In Halo Infinite or whatever? I think that's a thing. I'm not sure. I don't really play Halo. What else can you do in Halo? I remember sword canceling was a thing, but I don't think that's a thing in Infinite. And then movement tech. I don't remember. Like, didn't Halo allow you to have like a grappling hook now? Is that a thing in Halo? Like a grappling hook? I'm not sure. I know you can sprint actually in Halo now, which is kind of weird for Halo. But other than that, I'm not sure what else Halo has. And then the whole thing with Rainbow Six Siege, I don't even play Rainbow Six Siege. So I got no idea. I know the only movement tech that I know of, and it's not even movement tech, is like the leaning. And it's like, you're asking me to hit another button along with WASD to like walk one way and like lean another way. Or like as I'm peeking out, like hold, what's the defaults? Like E, Q, and E. You're asking me to like do this weird thing where I mush two buttons with one finger on my keyboard or something like that. It's like where you like, if you're peeking this way, you have to lean this way and walk this way. So I'm like, no, thank you. I'll pass.
But even then, it's
Yeah, you
still
can
limited,
mantle.
especially in the y-axis. But then there's games that just let you go crazy. These
Yeah.
games are considered movement shooters.
Yeah. Titanfall. Apex. Blood Hunt. I actually liked the Blood Hunt movement. Whenever I was talking to a couple of my buddies about Blood Hunt, I said it was the closest thing that we will ever get to if Warframe ever made a BR. It felt good. You had, because you know how Warframe, like, you have your regular movement, WASD, and then you had, I think you had a sprint, or like you could just, there was a setting where you could auto sprint on, and you could slide jump. That was a thing. And it was very easy to like wall bounce between buildings, like down an alley. So that was pretty cool. And I think there was teleporting or some shit. Like you could throw a ghost out and you teleport to the ghost and something like that. So you could like do fake outs and shit. I thought that was pretty cool. But the thing that those were the things that made Blood Hunt really cool for me, because it just felt like I was playing Warframe, but BR. And I love Warframe movement. Warframe movement is awesome. More Titanfall. I don't know what that game was.
But first,
The
some
Splitgate?
history. Players have always wanted to go fast and fly and be free,
Yes.
breaking the boundaries put into games, which is why speedrunning is so insanely popular.
I don't know about insanely popular, but there is a niche community of people that engage in it. I don't think it's insanely popular, but I'll let you cook.
But when it came to online multiplayer games, this was never really an option. You stayed pretty grounded and stayed within the limitations set by the developers. Until one day, the rocket jump was discovered.
The rocket jump! It's so fast, so fast. 2,700 miles an hour. That's so fast, dude.
First seen in Doom, it was popularized in Quake. Players discovered a technique to boost themselves higher or further by shooting the ground with a rocket. By exploiting the physics of the Quake engine, even more advanced movement techniques were discovered. There was circle jumping, strafing, and bunny hopping. All of these movements...
Bro, I really wish I grew up with a computer back in the day when all this shit was like popping off like that. This, like, the more videos I watch with like Quake and CS and all that jazz, the more I'm just like, God dang it. I was so fucking poor. Oh man. But yeah.
became so popular and so useful at the highest competitive level of Quake. They were so prominent that every single one of these...
Bro, was there ever a time where so Quake and Counter-Strike were both on, what do you call it? Like the PC. Was there ever a time where there was like maybe like a back and forth between the Quake bros and the Counter-Strike bros on like which shooter was better, which one was more skillful, or, you know, did some of the CS bros try to cross over into Quake, or did any Quake pros try to cross over into CS? Like, what was that like? Man, if somebody made a documentary about that era, because this was at a time that the internet wasn't as big as it is today. So I think that would be really cool if we could get in on like the ground level with some of the players that were like popping off back in the day. And maybe was there like a rivalry between the two communities? Or, I mean, I would imagine no, but still, it's kind of interesting to think about because, you know, Counter-Strike has movement. Quake has more movement, but you know, they're both very different like aiming styles. Quake, there's a lot of tracking. Yeah, you got the railgun or whatever for your flicks and whatnot, but a lot of it is like either tracking or predicting. And Counter-Strike, you know, you're like they're all like crosshair placement, your placement of your crosshair, you know, and maybe a little baby micro flick is all that jazz. But I would have been so intrigued to see the conversations that would have went back and forth between the two communities.
Crazy movement techniques, including rocket jumping, were all added into future Quake games as intentional mechanics. Rocket jumping has since made appearances in other FPS titles. For example, you can do this with the soldier in Team Fortress 2. While this mechanic...
Yes, you can, but Team Fortress 2 isn't, you know, the most popular game. Although there are people that do play it still.
Mechanic was the beginning of the movement shooter. It had limitations and also was something that required practice, meaning that it wasn't as simple for newer players to try. So the idea of a movement...
Damn, this dude is flicking so hard back and forth, and pretty accurately too. I would imagine back in the day, at least with the Quake bros, everybody had to play on like a really high sense. I would imagine somewhere between at least from like 35 cm and down. You know, maybe 10, 15, 20, 25. Because you gotta, if you got a rocket and you're like consistently hitting these rocket jumps, there's a lot of like 180s going on. So if you're doing that and you're trying to do that at like 40, 50, 60 cm, that's a lot of arm movement, yo. All right. But if you're just doing that pretty accurately with your wrist and your fingers, then it's a lot less tiring. So I just have to imagine like the players back then probably, you know, play on a little higher sense.
Shooter wasn't really mainstream. Games would still dabble with trying new movement mechanics, but it was never the focus.
Oh, yeah.
That is, until a developer changed the game.
The movement
Picture
shooter.
This. It's 2014. Call of Duty has released one of its most forgettable titles. You probably don't even know which one I'm talking about. But you're playing some really fun single-player games like BioShock Infinite. And in BioShock Infinite, you love this cool grappling mechanic that you have where you can zip around and zoom around this flying city.
Bro, when this game first came out and I played it, what I played on 360? I think I played it on 360. Um like this whole like grappling hook thing that these guys were peddling, this I thought this was the coolest thing. And to be in like a map with this rail system, I thought was the coolest thing ever because you could have enemies that chased you down on this shit. And I think you're able to have your gun out sometimes and you could just like shoot them off or whatever. I don't remember. But it was this little rail system was so cool.
City. You think, man, this thing would be so sick in my Call of Duty game. For real, for real. Then, in March, a new developer by the name of Respawn drops Titanfall.
Titanfall.
Maybe you were drawn in by the big robots,
Yep.
but you stayed for the movement.
Yep.
You've seen wall running before in Prince of Persia
I did.
and Assassin's Creed, but
Yes.
never like this. You can wall run and double jump and
Yeah. I think in Prince of Persia and Assassin's Creed, all the climbing and movement was done from a third person perspective, but to see it be done in a first person shooter or like a first person perspective on a shooter, this was new to me. All right, I thought this was so cool. I had no idea what it was going to feel like or anything like that until you just get the game and start playing.
shoot and grapple and zip, and oh my god, it's incredible.
Oh,
People
yeah.
are blown away by this, and it's a hit. Sort of. It's no Call of
Sorta.
Duty game, but it gets a strong following, and Call of Duty sees this and wants in. At the end of 2014, Call of Duty released Advanced Warfare, which had movement, but not like Titanfall.
Yeah.
So in their next
I mean, it looked like you had like a little dash thing and like an air dash, or I think wasn't in that one you could you wall run in that one, or was this the Treyarch one that you started to like wall run? But it what clearly was not the same.
Black Ops game, they go all in on the movement shooter idea.
Yeah.
Essentially, they copy Titanfall. Black Ops
Yeah.
3 had wall running and all of the other stuff that you would expect in a game like this. These games helped bring movement shooters to the mainstream and showed a lot more people their potential. However, while these games were decently successful, I don't think people were ready.
No.
Because
No, at the time, people back then thought they were good, but they really weren't. And plus, all that movement on a controller, that's a big bite to eat. All right, that's a big bite. All right, unless you were playing on like a high sensitivity, which most rollers would not. Most people were chilling at like the default sense. I think it would have been like 2 or 3 or something like that, which is like either average or slow. It's seldom would you ever get like a try-hard person to, actively try to increase their sensitivity on a controller to compensate for all the movement you got. But yeah, people were I think they were just very overwhelmed with all the wall running and, the guy can, because, traditionally a lot of the Call of Duty maps were the 3-lane maps in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, I didn't play this one, but when you start to implement like gigantic I don't know, walls on like, and you start to extend the 3 lanes into like a possibly a 4 or a 5 lane, or maybe there's like a big loop around a map, or maybe there's like a 3 lane on the most like level 1 version of the map, but then like you tilt your head up, gamers don't look up, you tilt your head up and all of a sudden the map is extended and you could start jumping up there and wall running on all these walls up top on your basic bitch little 3-lane map, and then it's like a whole it feels new.
at the time, a lot of people, especially the fans of Call of Duty, did not like the direction that these games were going. Today, a lot of people talk about how amazing and underrated Black Ops 3 is in hindsight. But people were getting really tired of the futuristic aesthetic and crazy movement, and missed the grounded approach of the original Call of Duty games.
Yeah.
However, in 2016, Titanfall's developer Respawn doubled down and made Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is a masterclass in movement and arcade shooters. It's easily the peak of what a multiplayer movement shooter could be.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Titanfall 2's release date was sandwiched between Infinite Warfare, another Call of Duty movement shooter, which fans and critics also didn't love, and Battlefield 1, a throwback to World War 1.
It was just like, think about an Oreo. And whenever you think about Oreo, it's like, ooh, all the good stuff is in the middle. but it's like a reverse Oreo. You had the Call of Duty bros, and then you had the anti Call of Duty bros, aka the Battlefield bros, and then you had Titanfall, which was like this weird thing. It's a shooter still, but it didn't carry the same clout and oomph as Battlefield and Call of Duty. So people were just like, whatever. I'm just gonna go play Battlefield. I'm just gonna go play Call of Duty.
Titanfall 2 was a critical success, but the sales were not good enough to warrant a sequel. And Infinite Warfare made fans desperate for the old Call of Duty formula.
Yep.
So it was at this point in time where developers stopped making multiplayer movement shooters.
So I also would imagine at this time, between all these shooting games that were coming out, there had to have been some sort of overlap, with the chances are, if you are a COD bro, how likely is it going to be that you at least saw Titanfall, or maybe you bought COD Titanfall, or maybe you bought all three shooters, or maybe you didn't like any of that shit and you were just Battlefield and I want my vehicles and all that shit. I would have to imagine that the amount of overlap was probably not as much as it is today. All right, because back in the day, I mean, what was this, like 20? What do you say, 15, 16? Which isn't that too far? Like in the past, the internet was popping off. Everyone was still pretty connected, but it just didn't seem like if you saw like your favorite YouTuber, what are the chances are he's playing all three shooters? Probably not high. Now you look at your favorite YouTuber, what are the chances that they're like a variety streamer now and they're playing all the games? Probably a little bit more higher, I would imagine.
Call of Duty toned down the movement in Black Ops 4 and completely rebooted their franchise in Modern Warfare, and games just stayed pretty grounded for a while. In 2017, Lawbreakers would try and make a movement shooter, and it died on impact.
I had no idea what Lawbreakers was.
Saddest part is, if this game came out right now, it might have seen a lot more success than it did at the time. Then, Overwatch released and would create characters with different kinds of movement, but they were limited and tied to specific heroes, so it wasn't really a movement shooter. By this point, if you were looking,
it was movement shooter diet.
For a movement shooter, you're gonna be out of luck. The only insane movement you'd find would be in single-player campaigns, like Doom 2016. Games like Fortnite and Destiny 2 had movement of their own from building or just doing weird stuff, but these weren't games that primarily focused and worked around the movement. Movement shooter fans...
Was that Master Chief zipping around with a samurai sword? Yeah, it is.
These weren't games that primarily...
Yeah, that's fucking Master Chief with like a samurai sword, zipping around through the air.
Focused and worked around the movement. Movement shooter fans wanted more, and some just kept Titanfall 2 alive for
Oh, what are we doing with Moki here? That's him, officers. Arrest him. Get him. Go back to movement jail, Moki.
As long as possible. But then, through the scraps of Titanfall's engine, Respawn would come and save the day. Kind of.
Yeah.
In 2019, Apex Legends dropped out of nowhere, but was a huge surprise hit. The gunplay was silky smooth, and the movement was...
If you want to compare the gunplay from Apex to Titanfall 2, I would say it's night and day. Like, the gunplay feels much more responsive, way smoother, and while it's not perfect, it is way better than the Titanfall 2 gunplay. A lot of the times in Titanfall 2, you have like pointless screen shake. I don't think there's like a point for ADSing because all the guns have a set recoil pattern. So it doesn't matter if you zoom in, zoom out, because in a lot of games, whenever you zoom in, it's supposed to like tighten the recoil. But in Titanfall 2, it didn't. So you have your normal recoil pattern, and then you zoom in, your gun is still doing all this noise right in front of your face. And plus, on top of it, there's like a considerable amount of visual clutter in Titanfall 2 as well. I mean, same thing with Apex though, but...
familiar. It was like Titanfall, but toned down a bit. And characters schmooved. grappling
Yeah.
hooks, zip lines, jump pads, speed boost. This game was scratching that itch for a movement shooter. Players and content creators like Moki Sniper began to discover new movement techniques like wall bouncing, tap strafing, super gliding, bunny hop healing, some of which are still here, others were patched out.
What was patched out? I didn't know that shit got patched out.
Some of which are still here, others were patched out.
Oh, bee hopping. Oh, that like bee hopping, the bee hop healing. It used to be really faster. You can still kind of do it, but it's like a fraction of what it used to be. To remove bunny hopping for me. Oh, what a joke.
This game was like Titanfall on a leash. For most movement shooter fans, this was enough.
It was Titanfall, no sugar added.
But for others, it was just the beginning. Which brings us to modern day gaming. Every big game has dabbled with movement mechanics. Fortnite has some crazy movement now. They have that hammer thing, or they introduced Dragon Ball Z clouds, or jump pads. There's literally so many ways to move in Fortnite, so like, I don't even know if half these things still exist, because I can't keep up with Fortnite. It's
I can't keep up with Fortnite either, dude. You're not alone.
too much. Halo Infinite added grappling hooks and thrusters. Battlefield 2049 added crazy movement as well.
Oh yeah, they did. I remember that one Battlefield game. They had the wingsuit and they had a grapple thing. And I thought these were steps in a good direction for a lot of these shooters that traditionally were just boots on the ground. It's just, for me, when you add more movement, the game just feels more freeing. It's more fun, and it's just another layer about the game to learn. So I might be a little biased in that respect, but I mean, it is what it is.
Warzone players are learning how to do some crazy parachute glide movement tricks. Apex is still Apex, and more people are looking back fondly on Black Ops 3. I think it's because people are becoming a lot better at gaming, and a lot more interested in practicing and learning movement mechanics. Players are...
when a game first comes out, a lot of the player base will just have like some sort of base skill, which is in general pretty dog shit. And then the longer a game stays out, eventually there's this thing that I just refer to it as, is called skill creep. The longer a game is out, your player base is going to get better, and they will come up with more refined things to create a skill gap between themselves and the new player. And it's up to the devs to try to, depending on what they want to do with their game, they want the skill gap very short, like very small. The players, they want the skill gap very big. All right, because I put all this time and effort into learning your game and perfecting it. I want to have some sort of payoff for it. But yeah,
are making crazy clips in their favorite games, showing off insane movement and getting millions of plays.
Roller 360, no scope, not valid.
There's clearly interest, and we as a society have collectively began loving movement in our games. If there ever was a time to release the next big movement shooter, now is the time. Titanfall 3, Call of Duty X.
Oh Jesus! Honestly, if any of these games, well, COD is like a no. Like, nobody gives a shit about the most current COD, which is like, what was it, Modern Warfare 3? That shit just came out, and everyone's just like, nah, it's bad. Just go back to playing one of the old ones. COD is I would say it's like a lost cause. You're never gonna get like a good one. As far as Titanfall 3 goes, yeah, I would be excited for it to some degree, but I would also be naive to think that it would not become a victim of modern gaming practices. So if Titanfall 3 came out, it would probably, honestly, hopefully it would not do the Halo Infinite thing where it's like they came out with the multiplayer first and then you have to pay for the campaign. Oh my god, that would be so bad. But like if and when Titanfall 3 comes out, you know, it's multiplayer is gonna have a battle pass, it's gonna have paid cosmetics. Who knows if it'll have pay for convenience or any like sort of pay to win, so on and so forth. Maybe there's a free battle pass, a regular battle pass, and a super battle pass. But it's not gonna be like Titanfall 2. like to some degree they'll probably use the same engine, but shit, they can't even get the Apex engine, which is essentially the same thing as Titanfall, running correctly. They break the damn thing every patch. and you're hoping Titanfall 3 is going to come out and it's going to be a seamless transition? No.
Battlefield Infinity. I think people will be ready and willing to practice and become movement.
Well, yeah, movement gods. Battlefield, whatever the next Battlefield that comes out, I don't know. I just see nothing but bad things from what's the current Battlefield 2042. I see nothing but bad things. I mean, I supposedly they came out with a scoreboard now, and I guess that's all right. And they did away with a lot of those memes on day one, where you could just infinitely respawn a little hovercraft and just fly up the side of a building. And there was always that one clip, I forgot where I saw it from, of like 5 hovercrafts just climbing a skyscraper, and there was hovercrafts fighting on top of the skyscraper. Oh my god, that shit was funny.
Gods. However, for one of these to succeed, it needs to make sure it learns from the mistakes of past attempts. The Battle Royale genre created many different games that explore the idea of insane movement, from Spellbreak to Hyperscape to Blood Hunt. However, these games failed to attract that audience. While a game like Hyperscape let you fly up in the sky and teleport and disappear, it broke 2 of the most fundamental rules of a movement shooter.
Ooh, the fundamental rules of a movement shooter. Not actually.
1. The core movement must be smooth. And
Ooh, yeah.
2. Readability. For a movement shooter to work, the default movement needs to feel smooth. Everything needs to harmonize with each other, from running, to sliding, to jumping, to climbing. It should be second nature, and most importantly, it should not slow down momentum.
Honestly, one of my favorite games to play when it comes to movement is either going to be, it's probably one of two of many. It's going to be Warframe, because Warframe movement feels awesome. They have walking, they have sprinting, they have, what's it called, the bullet jump. And then if you jump up in the air in ADS, you can slow down time. I think you can slide in all 4 directions, and I think, like, or maybe it's 8-way directions. I think you can slide in that, and then if you look up, you can just bullet jump straight up. And on top of it, you have wall running and wall bouncing. Well, not really. I mean, they kind of have wall bouncing. You have wall climbing. I think you can just stick on a wall. I love Warframe movement. And then also, probably Doom Eternal. I love the Doom Eternal movement. It's awesome. The what was it? The super shotty. Ugh. And then the air dashes and all that jazz. It feels so nice. It's awesome. So, yeah, those would be my like top 2 movement shooters. Either Warframe or Doom Eternal. Awesome.
If the movement is clunky, it won't matter that you can fly. If it feels jank 90% of the time, it's just not fun.
Yeah.
Then there's readability. Essentially, it can't be impossible to track down people. It's one of the core ideas behind balancing legends, according to ex-Apex developer Brian Vidovic. Brian talked to me about how important it is that players don't feel like they can't read where their enemies are. And games like Hyperscape ran into this issue a lot. Titanfall 2 also had this problem as well, but Respawn designed and balanced that game with this idea in mind. And they learned from their mistakes with Titanfall when they designed Apex Legends. Brian explained this with the Brownian fluid problem.
When we introduce quick moving, unpredictable movement, it is a nightmare, right? To try and like do that. You're doing that. This is what was called in Titanfall 2 about the Brownian fluid problem. When you don't have a front line, when you can't understand where the action is happening, when people can appear behind you, above you, left, right, and center, you don't have a through line to understand the combat. In the beginning of Apex, y'all remember Pathfinder was so broken, and he was everywhere, and one Pathfinder.
I did not play Apex when it first came out. I think my first interaction with Apex was around like season 4 or 5 or something like that. Yeah. But I mean, what I like knee-jerk reaction to him talking about like the 2 teams, there's a front line, maybe a back line, and so on and so forth. like knee-jerk reaction, I would think, okay, so you don't want to have any sort of unreadability in your movement. Um, so what does that mean? Okay, so you can't instantly teleport behind someone. Okay, so and then I guess they're using Pathfinder as an example. I don't know how Pathfinder operated. I would imagine it's something similar as what it is today. In that, I guess you could grapple like on the ground or on a like a building and get behind a team. I guess in that respect, but it's still not really a teleport. But the grapple does allow you to move quicker than sprinting. So, I mean, it's not like you're invincible while you're in the air as Pathfinder, though. But, I mean, I get what he's talking about.
Could go and whip around the whole lobby and kill everybody, and it was insane.
I'm sure every Pathfinder was doing that. Absolutely.
That's too far. It's an extreme example. But that's why Pathfinder got nerfed into the sun, because it was too much.
So, if a developer wants to create an insane movement shooter, they need to balance their game around the movement so that it doesn't become impossible to fight enemies who have mastered the mechanics. Don't get me wrong, people will always be good at games and stomp on noobs, but you never want to create a scenario where the enemy becomes literally invincible. Your average player should never find it impossible to kill an enemy. Creating a game is not easy. It's a tightrope. And these rules aren't set in stone, but I think they are useful to think about when creating a movement shooter. So if you're a developer, just think about it. I made this video because I genuinely believe that the culture around shooters has changed enough for a movement shooter to finally thrive.
I would be interested in what makes you think that, because as of right now, I mean, I can boot up like Twitch, or I could just rattle off a list of like the most popular shooters. And yeah, they'll have like some degree of movement, but I would say in general, it's not like the shooting genre is, or like at least the FPS genre is like a thriving genre right now. I mean, I would say it's like kind of average, or if not dying, because a lot of the games, or at least the most popular games that people want to play because they're popular, have a lot of mechanics in them unrelated to the movement, actually, that make the game not fun. But let's just keep going.
I think there's more excitement around games with cool movement. There's still a void in the market for a movement shooter. Who knows what? Titanfall 3. But
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you also want a new movement shooter to come out?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. I would be psyched if some new movement shooter came out. Absolutely.
And if so, would you prefer a sequel to an existing franchise or a...
No. I would not want Titanfall 3. I mean, there is a piece of me that wants Titanfall 3, but there's another wiser side that would say it's not going to be what you think, man. It really won't.
whole new IP? Let me know in the comments down below. As of recording,
I would honestly rather have new blood, like some new development team to try to crack the code on the movement shooter multiplayer thing. I would rather that.
Marathon trailer just dropped and it looks really great, and maybe it's a movement shooter. I know
Maybe.
it's going to be an extraction shooter, but like...
Oh, extraction shooter? Nope. I mean, if you like it, you like it, but I cannot do extraction shooters. That just opens the door to cheaters. Much the same way any shooter, when they come out, there's no anti-cheat or any good significant anti-cheat system for that shooter. And then you want to up the ante and make it an extraction shooter? I don't know, man. That's just not my cup of tea.
Porque no los dos? Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I like making these discussion type videos every now and then, and if there's a topic you want me to talk about in the future, let me know in the comments, and I'll think about talking about it. Anyways, cool. I'll catch you later.
Nice. Oh, that was a cool video. I'm a fan. I like it. I mean, yeah, I do think I think everybody is always ready for another movement shooter. Only because in my own view of how I play games, I usually like akin playing games to remember how in World of Warcraft you had like armor slots? It's like this is your helmet slot, this is your chest piece, your shoulder, your weapon. I usually viewed video games kind of like that. So like, what's my favorite shooter I'm playing right now? It would be this one. What's my favorite, I don't know, single player campaign I'm playing right now? It would be this one. So I would have kind of like game slots, but they would all be like different genres or whatever. And I mean, for me, honestly, right now, as far as like FPS goes, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just playing Kovacs and that's about it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I like the video. I like the discussion ones. And yeah, I want to see more. Good video, man. Awesome. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Later.